Hi, I'm Jonathan from Potency World. This is the second part of our conversation about dyslexia, and in this episode, we're looking to diagnose dyslexia both in ourselves, our children, and our families, um, to help them to understand. So, Reggie, talk to me about your inspiration for this chapter.
Yeah, and to be honest, really happened started at work really, and obviously speaking to you in terms of diagnosing sort of dyslexia. Um, Basically, at work we had a sort of external company come in to talk to the managers and everyone about neurodiversity. And the big buzzword for me was when they came in, because I've never heard it being mentioned in this way, was superpower. And and that really sort of like got my interest. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I spoke to this external company about being getting tested for dyslexia because I've always known that I've got dyslexia. And so essentially I got tested, and they said that I've got moderate dyslexia. So I can go into it a little bit more, but I just wanted to find out about you guys in terms of sort of like diagnosing and whether you guys have been tested.
Sinead, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I never actually officially got tested or had an official diagnosis. One teacher picked up on it when I was kind of just leaving primary school.
Right.
But then, yeah, and then after that, it was kind of never really looked at because I think at that time when it got diagnosed, like it still really wasn't a known thing. I'm not sure if when it was even brought up, if really my parents knew what it was, and I didn't really kind of know or understand it at that time. But it was probably that at that point that it was kind of the turning point for me in becoming aware of what sort of how it kind of was disadvantaging me, and like where I needed to sort of turn my attention to sort of balance things out.
Well, I've just Googled while you've been telling about that, and it says in 1877, the reading and spelling difficulties or characteristics of dyslexia were first identified by Adolf Kussmaul. But I'm just going to do a big,
I remember as well. There was a guy, but that was by the time I'd got to like 16, and we were doing our GCSEs, and he was in our class, and he had an official diagnosis of dyslexia, but the only sort of difference he had was that he got extra exam time, which I found absolutely absurd because I never needed additional time in exams because I always finished like a lot earlier than everyone else, so that would never have been helpful to me. I'm not sure if that's just me, but the extra time in exams is not helpful. I think as well as sort of hearing things the same, which we talked about in our last episode, the same would be said for seeing things the same. I think actually, Johnny, you gave me a really good tip. If you read something out loud, then you can spot mistakes
Yes.
more so than you can by just reading stuff over and over. You don't pick up on the mistakes, and that's been a really useful tip to me actually, is reading stuff out loud, but you can't do that in exams.
No. And the irony is that visual thinkers, so in neuro-linguistic programming, which is a skill I learned, and I think it's quite apposite for this conversation, the fact, oh God, I lost my train of thought again, but the fact that right, okay, let me go back to doing this search on Google, and SEN, let's try that one. Right, so the earliest I can find is 1970, advocacy of dyslexia with changing, okay. And then the one below it, oh, here we go, right, so the dyslexia was recognised as a registered disability in the UK, covered by the Equality Act 2010. And then for a school, so dyslexia is classified as a learning disability under strength of special learn. That doesn't, okay, it doesn't do that.
I hate the term that it's a disability, I really do. Because I feel like for a disability, something just has to completely disable you from being able to, or like make something really difficult for you. But dyslexia has so many advantages over disadvantages. And like, for example, a disability to me would be, you know, stereotypically, I guess, someone in a wheelchair, which disadvantages them. It doesn't really give them a lot of advantages. I can't imagine. I mean, I can't think of very many or one, but yeah, I feel like dyslexia definitely gives me more advantages than disadvantages.
Yeah, same here. I think it's the speed of thought, as I said, so those multiple perspectives I was talking about in the last issue, trying to compress that into one stream of words that another person can understand is it's so difficult to do. And I only found out, so my diagnosing of dyslexia was basically self-diagnosed. So I was teaching some special educational needs children, I say children, young adults, so 13 to 15, trying to teach them, because they obviously had dyslexia, how to do it. And as I was reading this book by this woman called, forgotten her name, but there's a lady who wrote the book, Bridges to Success. And in that book, it sort of says, okay, what you need to do is to teach them visual learning, which doesn't mean the vision's outside. So a lot of people in schools currently think that visual learning means using a screen or something like that, or even being outside, whereas what it really should be down to is how you process the world. So I keep on hearing this thing about no one is skilled in critical thinking, or anti-factional. There's a word that's like the opposite. Counterfactual is the word. So counterfactual is like allowing yourself to look at a completely opposite view from your own and not be concerned about it. So I was reading this book and going, but at the same time, not a bit before, for the previous 4 years, I'd been writing this own book of mine. And in the books, I was recovering from the strokes, and I was volunteering in primary schools, and, you know, having a great relationship with the kids. It was really funny. We had a lot of fun. And suddenly, as I read the book, it goes, there were various excerpts from ex-patients of hers, client of hers, and they all said things like, oh yeah, I see the world from multi-perspectives. And I read that and I went, that's me. And then instantly I went back to the fact that I failed English. So I got a 1 we were the first year to do GCSEs. I got a 1 for the English oral, and I got an F for the English writing. Absolute failure. I mean, literally, but yet my intelligence was obvious, but my interest in school very, very poor. And it wasn't really the diagnosis that did it for me. It was so there's a phrase that people are either radiators or drains. And for me, most people, as lovely as they are drains, because they don't seem to be able to, and Sinead and Reggie referred to it earlier, the problem solving that dyslexics can do. And so I'm reading this book, realised I failed English, and I was seeing at the cinema Assassin's Creed, off a video game, and I went after that we went out to my dad's for a cup of tea, And he goes, "Oh yeah, how you doing?" I said, "Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm reading this book at the moment about visual spelling, and I was at this film." And he goes, "Okay," and he says, "Spell the word assassin," and I won't do it now because I'll get it wrong almost certainly. but basically, I did it perfectly. And the reason is because I'd seen it written on the trailers and everything, whilst reading a book about visual spelling, and knowing that, oh, I'm a visual learner, so I put the image of the word in my mind, and bang, straight away. And the skill I learnt, so I was only able to teach 18 children how to overcome their dyslexia, but the way is, I think it was on the previous episode, we're talking about 5-6-year-olds. If you can get a child at 5 and 6 and get them to use the correct strategy for whatever they're doing, it will change your life. And of all the children I taught, this technique, interrupt me when you want to, but this technique is basically, what you do is you say, okay, think of a giraffe. And they go, okay, thinking of a giraffe. You go, okay, so tell me about that giraffe. Where is he? What's he doing? Or where is she? What's she doing? And they'll go, well, it's in the jungle. I'm not going to be in the jungle, but on the plains of Africa, and really dry country, and they're munching on leaves, and okay, it's mostly sand, and you might see camels. Okay, so now take your giraffe and just get him to stand on his own. I go, okay, we've done that. And then you go, where is your giraffe? If you push it out of your head through your eyes, where's the picture? And the picture is always either left or right, up or looking. So looking up, left or right. It varies from person to person, but basically looking up one way is visual learning, and looking up the other way is visual remembering. So what I used to get these children to strongly build the link between the description and the image. So then what you do is you'd write the word giraffe on a post-it note, and for some bizarre reason purple is the best colour, and you find in their field of vision, you move this bit of post-it note with the word around, probably, so it's typically 4 to 5 feet away, and you sort of have to move it around because you're looking to put the picture where their picture of the giraffe is. You find that space and go, I'd say make a camera noise. They go, bit of fun, and then take the word down, and you go, right, okay, spell giraffe, and they spell it perfectly first time, and then you go, oh, excellent. Now you go, what's your favourite colour? And they say, oh, I love whatever it is. And you go, okay, make the letters of that word that colour, and you see them then create, because they're creating an image in their mind which is of the colours. So then when you ask them to recall the coloured image, you go, what's the last letter of the word? Okay, and the one before that, and the one before that, and what's the one before that? And the one before that. And they can spell the word in reverse order. Now, we have to be careful that reverse order is not backwards, because if you ask them to spell it backwards, you get a mirror image, which is one of the things we face. But if they've learned it this visual way, then they can spell the word backwards. And they did it first time, every time, for children I coached. Thoughts? I spoke for a long time now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of doing it. I think I more have relied on sort of, is it mnemonics?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, one of the ones I use is business, which I always say bus in every side street. So that's how I remember how to spell business. And there's loads of kind of words like that I've done, that I use either mnemonics for, or I've just kind of repeated it over and over and over and over until I've got it. Pretty much.
Brilliant.
So a lot of it is kind of, I suppose, repetition for me, and mnemonics. That's kind of how I.
Well, yeah, mnemonics. I mean, I had never even thought about using those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's funny though. Have you got any other examples? Like, there's always Plus in every side street.
I think. Oh, the way it's I suppose it's not a spelling, but also obviously we get our right and left mixed up.
Yeah.
Like one of the other things I have to physically write with my right hand to work out my right and left. And then for north, which I think everyone did it in school, but it was never eat shredded wheat to know where north. North.
Oh, we did naughty elephants. Naughty elephant sprays water. No, that's not right though. That doesn't work.
There was a few, but it was sort of things like that. Naughty
elephant squirts water. Northeast, southwest. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was yeah. Okay. So Sinead, in your following, when you left primary school, and one teacher said, "Oh, you might have this," and you didn't really look at it, so you weren't branded in as having a learning difficulty, or were you?
I wouldn't say I was branded as having a learning difficulty. I think for me it was always because my dyslexia isn't severe, I would say. But then that could be down to the amount of kind of work that I did put into, to sort of, I guess, masking it or trying to improve any sort of pitfalls. But it wasn't really sort of picked up on. And as I said, when I was in school, I think it was kind of maybe just becoming a thing. But it just wasn't really something that was particularly diagnosed. I'd be interested, Reggie, you said your daughter has dyslexia. How was her kind of diagnosis picked up compared to you? Was it just yourself because you are dyslexic?
No, well, I didn't know I was dyslexic when she was diagnosed.
Okay.
I kind of knew I was, but it's something that you just mentioned about what was it? The learning, you said
mnemonics.
No, not you, man. No, you said that you were at school and you said that you had a learning difficulty.
I think it was more
masking.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So when I went through work, when I got tested, the person said, right, because you've been coping for so long, that your test score is probably going to be not too bad because you've been masking and coping with it for so long. If you had this done, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, your dyslexic rate is probably going to be higher than it is now. And because over the years, we've learned to cope. We've learned to mask. We've learned to have strategies ourselves. So that's one thing she did say. She said that it's probably not going to be as high as you think it is, but it's because of the coping strategies that you've used. So when I got when I did the test, they came back and said that I'm 75% dyslexic, which I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to be that high,
right?
But the psychology of taking the dyslexic test I'm thinking, right, if this doesn't come back as I'm dyslexic, I must be really stupid. And that was the thing that I thought. I thought if I don't get diagnosed as dyslexic, what is wrong with me then? So it was kind of bittersweet that I got diagnosed with dyslexia. So it confirmed everything that I've been going through throughout my whole life. So that was a kind of relief. And also I thought, it's higher than I thought. And then it was quite an emotional time to actually read the report, because when you read the report, it just comes up with so many things, and they've got to send it to your workplace, or they don't have to send it to your workplace, but they send a recommendation. So it's quite it's quite a journey that you go through when you do get tested. That's one thing I will say.
So the coping strategies we use, clearly the transferable skill in that is that problem solving is second nature to. So what did you imagine was going to be the rate, Reggie? Because I've never heard it scored as 75%.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the, yeah, I mean, it's a figure. It was moderate. So moderate. If it was moderate, then I think I can't remember what the other range was, but it was. The only reason why I remember 75% is because it said that was represented the moderate dyslexia. That's. But
Right.
yeah. So, but I think there's many tests that out there that that measure the level of dyslexia. So I mean, in terms of my daughter. When she was 15, her French teacher mentioned that she might be dyslexic because she wasn't, doing well in her French classes. So then the school tested her, and they said, "Oh yeah, you've got minor dyslexia." And it's funny what Sinead said. They basically all they gave her was extra 15 minutes in the exam.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, like, whether that made a difference for her at all. I don't know.
Yeah, if it's anything like me, I don't think so. And that was one of the reasons why I think in school I never really thought it would be worthwhile pushing for. If I could have got out of a class, I might have taken it, but not for getting extra time. That's not what you want when you're in school. But yeah, I think for me as well, it was just the fear, I guess, of being kind of deemed lazy or stupid. Really pushed me from a young age to really just mask and work hard, come up with my own coping strategies, and I think that's just the way that kind of I guess I've got to where I am today with it.
I mean, when she was 18, my daughter, they had to, in order to go to university, she had to take she had to see, was it an educational psychologist, because the school test that they diagnosed her it wouldn't have covered university. So she had to go, and I can't remember whether she had to pay for it or we had to pay for it or not, whether it was, I can't remember. Anyway, so once they diagnosed professionally dyslexia, then she got basically still extra time in the exams, but more importantly, they offered her a free laptop and other resources. Plus, also, she was allowed to take her exams using a laptop, so it wasn't written. For her, that was a massive game changer.
Yeah.
Massive. That would have been huge for me. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, she said that you can go back and rewrite some of the stuff and rub it all out, and not rub it out, but erase it all out and delete and stuff like that. She said she doesn't know why all exams are not like that. For everybody, not just dyslexic people, but for everybody. And I'm sure it's going to lean that way soon anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. I think with the old COVID, sorry, Sinead, with the old COVID, we all got used to using laptops as a learning tool. So, yeah. Well, during the exams, my children, they were doing their exams online during COVID. So I'm not sure whether they were writing anything. I'll have to ask them, but I don't think they would. How would you do it? Yeah,
it would have been typed. So I'm wondering whether COVID has sort of like accelerated, exams for universities and other things going forward. So and then when she was doing her postgrad to become a teacher, she was given even more resources: a free printer, some other office equipment, and basically additional support to help her sort of like become a teacher. So
no, go on.
So in terms of going through the educational system and being diagnosed, every step or every area that she's sort of like been in, she's had the support, she's been diagnosed, she's had the test, and she's been supported, which is a far cry, I believe, from what we actually went through.
I think it's interesting as well. It sounds like it gets better the higher up into education that you go.
What do you mean?
As in, initially it was just getting extra time in high school, and then obviously once at university, the laptop, and there just seems to be a little bit more understanding of what is actually needed and what would be helpful. And then obviously doing the PGCE stage for teaching, then again there was kind of more support. So, and just more understanding of what support was needed rather than extra time in exams.
Well, it's interesting because the support your daughter received is what's called, so the 2010 Equality Act is what's called reasonable adjustments. So in any working environment, you're able to ask for, they don't have to give you it, but you're able to ask for reasonable adjustments for your particular condition. And yes, using Word as opposed to trying to write it down. I mean, I used to write documents that were basically all red, underlined, just underline, mistake after mistake after mistake. And when I used this strategy for visual spelling, I got to a point where there are so few red lines that when I have to put, I'll copy a word that I think I must have spelt this wrong, put it into Google, and it's like, no. And I am now not shocked, I am now amazed at how much better my writing is what am I doing? I think it's when I'm slowing down. So we're all hyper fast in our minds, and the mistakes happen because it's like people's names. So typically at the gym, and Reggie, you'll know this, typically for some reason everyone knows my name. And I say for some reason, everyone knows my name. And I after 5 years of being at the same gym, I started making an effort to remember names, because for me, names aren't important to the story. Like, tell me the story. I don't. But the trouble is, in those situations where everyone's calling each other by their name, I go, "All right, mate." And so what I did as a strategy, these coping strategies, what I do is, bloke in the changing room, his name's Chris, he's a local counsellor, so I call him Christina, and that makes me laugh, and because I'm laughing, I remember it. And that's how I've done it. I've started making associations, because for me, it has to link to something more meaty than just your name. I don't know what you guys think about that.
No, I use exactly the same. So, and I've made a conscious effort over the last 4 or 5 years to try and remember people's names, and it's fun. It's fun going through that process.
Sinead?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've actually made an effort in that department yet. Maybe that's my to-do list. But the problem is that I'm pretty rubbish at people's faces as well. Like, they're one way or the other.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a bit rubbish with both. So, yeah, I mean, I've had people come up to me and I've had whole conversations, and I wouldn't for the life of me remember their name, where I ever met them, or who they are.
Similar in that case. I'm as equally as bad. I was walking through Sainsbury's in not the Palmer's Green, Winchmore Hill, Sainsbury's, and this bloke come up to me. He goes, "Oh, do you remember me?" I went, "No." "Oh, what?" He goes, "Oh, we were having this discussion one day, and you said this thing, and it changed my life, man. I really appreciate it." And I couldn't remember him at all. And it was only then that I realised that if a neuro, so we'll say that everyone's on a spectrum, but there are more neurotypicals than there are neurodivergents. And typically what I found is, because I now know about my multiple perspectives, I now am able to shut up where I wasn't able to do that before. But yeah, faces and names, I just, basically everything, all of my brain resources, or most of my brain resources, are marshaled, and the purpose of them is multiple interpretations of now. So I'm very bad at memory, and yeah, memory tasks, I could make myself better, but it's not what I'm currently doing.
If you do need a tip on someone's name, by the way, for anyone listening, my go-to is usually to ask for their email address, So you can send them an email or something so you can get their name. So yeah, that's kind of my secret tip, is if I can't remember someone's name, I'll ask for their email address. and hopefully it's not like I love dogs at Hotmail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now you see, you say that, and I have a similar thing. Oh, by the way, the woman who wrote that book, Bridges to Success, is called Olive Hickmott. Hickmott, Olive Hickmott. So anyone that's out there that is dyslexic, get the book and look at her YouTubes, and you'll find your tribe very, very easily. What was the last thing you said, Sinead? Because I was going to jump on the back of it.
About the
email addresses. Yeah. So what do I do? Oh, okay, yeah. Basically, people only exist if I've got if your number's in my phone. If your number's in my phone, then I remember you. But other than that, not at all. Quite shocking, really. I hadn't paid attention to that before. What's your view, Reg?
What in terms of what we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Visual. Yeah. I mean, like I say, I think in terms of remembering people's names, I just try and think of someone doing something really funny, and try and associate the name with that. But the one thing I was really going to ask you guys is just in terms of, because it's not about being diagnosed officially is one thing, and it could help you get extra time in the exam. But I think it's, for us, it's more importantly knowing that we could potentially be dyslexic and then navigating our lives through that, if that makes sense.
Sort of, but you can say it again.
Yeah, I think I would just say though that it's as much as it is great to be diagnosed as dyslexic and having that understanding and that awareness, I do think though it's just important not to take away from it. Yeah, again, as we've touched on it already, but to just not take it away from it that this is just a huge disadvantage to me, and not really knowing what to do or where to go with it. I definitely want people to get a dyslexia diagnosis and go, yeah, this is gonna this is gonna make my life better, because I'm going to be able to achieve so many things. Like, I feel like you're just limitless when it comes to having dyslexia with your opportunities in life, especially once you get kind of past the education system. That you can really come into your own and figure out what you're passionate about, and put your attention to that passion is going to be pretty amazing. So once you get the dyslexia diagnosis and you found what you're passionate about, I think life's going to be good.
I think it helps you understand. For me, it's helped me understand a lot of things that I've gone through in my life, and it's so that's the reason why. Maybe that's the reason why. And I think for me, it's just given me, I don't know, it's given me peace knowing that all this time, things that I'm able to do. So that's the reason why I'm able to do this better than others. Maybe that's the reason why I'm not so great at this. And it's just given me more clarity. So for me, whether I got diagnosed or not, I kind of knew I had it, but it was just, sort of like icing on the cake. Okay, tick it. Okay, I've been diagnosed with it. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, a very similar situation to me is what you're just saying, that the problem solving that we deal with, the way we mask it, gives us this incredible ability to problem solve in a way that most people that have been taught in a linear fashion, they can't do that, because to overcome a current paradigm, you need to be able to bounce from one end to the other. Whereas if you're always following the linear path, then you can't bounce from one to another. And my experience was very much so all through my life, before I realised, so literally until 5 years ago, I was going through life and people were saying to me, "Oh, Jonathan, this is the situation." I go, "Yeah, but," and I'd say, "Yeah, but," and I was pointing my finger in places around them, because my multiple perspectives then surround them, and I see it's like a sort of halo effect. Is it halo? It's like I'll tell you what it's like. It's like watching a 3D film without the 3D glasses on. I see that in that case it's 3 different cameras, but I see all of the different possibilities around that person. So I've gone through life and I didn't realise that I was being so rude, because people would tell me their truth and I would always go, but. And the but basically means, no, your truth isn't right. I didn't need...
I think it can be frustrating, right? That when you're pointing out all of these, spheres, or all of these different perspectives, that you can't get other people to see it. So they can't see it, and you really can't ever explain it to them. And half the time people either get annoyed with you or just think you're a nutter.
Yeah, and of course, in Sinead's case, in my case, that is definitely true. We are nutters. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Sinead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we're coming to the end of this episode. 3 minutes left on the clock. So, diagnosing dyslexia. Someone who's listening to this, Reggie, you're probably going to be the strongest on this. What kind of tools, techniques did you experience?
I tell you what, like I said before, I think it's diagnosing is one thing, and it's not going to, you're not going to suddenly solve all your issues by being diagnosed. I think it's just really knowing that you potentially could be dyslexic, and that gives you a starting point for sort of like having your coping strategies and sort of like moving forward with your life, and recognizing that again it is a superpower and you do some things better than others, and some things you're not going to be doing as great as others. And I think that's it. It's just your understanding and knowing that you've got it. I think that's the most important thing.
So when you did the assessment through the company, what kind of things did they ask you or get you to do?
It was most of it was online.
Okay.
Then some of it was just speaking to someone. It was reading from a passage and then doing comprehension. There was some of these, these tests that you do when you go to, not isometric tests, I can't remember what they're called.
Personality test,
those kind of tests. It was a mixture there was about 7 or 8 different blocks. I mean, for me, it was quite overwhelming just doing the 8 different blocks. You could do it in your own time, but there's so many ways of diagnosing it. That was just one way that this company did. There's so many other ways of doing it, but I think it's just really just understanding if you've got it, then you can navigate, and these may be the reasons why you do certain things that other people don't understand.
What about now? You're adult and your child was adult. So what if you're a parent of a young child who's struggling in school? I mean, my advice is go to Olive Hickmott. You can search for her, you'll immediately find her. What advice would you give a parent of a child you think is struggling because of this?
You have to go to the school. I think the schools are more geared up now than they were before. I think it's that simple.
Makes sense. Sinead?
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes, when you think of diagnosis, you think cure, and there is no cure, because it's not, as I said, it's not really, in my mind anyway, a disability. I just think it's, as Reggie says, it kind of gives you that peace of mind that there are other people out there, you're not alone, there are lots of resources available. But everyone's different, and I think when you get that diagnosis and you do look at things that you find are sort of maybe holding you back in school or a disadvantage in the workplace, that you can kind of look at those things, and they're definitely sort of tools that are out there, and once you find your tool, you can basically turn that into an advantage. Like I said in a previous episode, reading for me, once I learned how to speed read, that turned into an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
That is amazing, amazing stuff. Okay, well, if you've liked this show, then come back next month and we'll be covering in the next one. I'm sure we'll be covering. I'll tell you when we get there. But for now, Sinead, Reggie, thanks very much. Reggie, do you want to do your closeout?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this conversation and I hope people get something from it.
Cool. All right, we'll see you again, or you'll hear us again in a month's time. Thanks a lot.